2:42 time. It's a warm welcome back onto the program to Greg Murphy as we talk some supercars at a bit of a mid-season break. Ren, welcome back, Murph.
Marty, good to talk to you.
Are you watching any Olympics, mate?
Oh, geez, a little bit, not too much. Yeah, a bit busy.
No, they
got
don't
it
have-
on.
Should they have motorsport at the Olympics?
Well, they've got every other bloody thing, haven't they? So, so why shouldn't they? They should do. It's not that easy, really, in that respect, to do that because it's obviously there's so many different disciplines in the sport. But there's things like that have been run in the past, like a race of champions kind of thing, where you set up a format which is the cars are all identical, and it's like a race of champions kind of thing. They could do that in motorsport and create an Olympic champion. There'd be ways to do it for sure, but as I say, they've got every other bloody thing, so they should really give it a go.
I'd like to think karting, because not most, but so many drivers come from karts, and I mean you can standardise a kart, can't you? And then just basically, have the what was that old race they used to do in Europe where everyone basically was on the start line in their leathers and had to run to the car, jump in the car, and away you go.
Well, that was, yes, there's been all those kinds of things. Le Mans was the one back in the day that everyone had to run across the track to. Yeah, they could go to Le Mans and do it, actually, being it's, well, they could have this year being in France. But anyway, yes, I don't think it's on the radar. They probably think it's too difficult, and, it's so bad for the environment as well.
Oh, here apparently. We go. And you tell me that the River Seine isn't. So anyway, let's talk about the supercars,
it looks like a lovely bit of water.
Well, you go swimming in that.
All right. Catch me in it.
So Sydney last week, both won by Mostert, and a couple of weeks ago, and I watched both of those, and that really drags him up into second in the standings. It was great racing from him, and it I don't know, it just seems this year that there is a number of drivers that can genuinely win it. Is that the feeling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, and it's become quite track specific. It's the philosophy. I think we've spoken about the philosophy of the Gen 3. I think is very good, and it's simplified the process a little bit because there's just less things that the clever race teams can go and spend money on. So therefore, it keeps it a little bit more sort of open. So the car's it's not simple, but what you can do to them is very heavily restricted. So it's very much more a one-make kind of formula, which I personally think is the right way to go. So, but there's still individuality with various little things and ideas that teams can come up with that operate within the box. So you still get that fluctuation and that shift, and some weekends someone's really good, and there's also the tyre situation because we've got different compounds and bits and pieces that some philosophies work really good with a certain compound, others not so much. So that's where we're getting our variance from. But Chaz the other week at Sydney was a standout. I mean, I was actually there for that weekend, sort of hanging out in WAU with Ryan Wood, who's Chaz's young Kiwi teammate. And so I was actually up close and personal with what was going on there, and he was just awesome. He really was. His the way he was driving that car and his patience and his consistency was obviously a standout. So it was a great weekend for that organisation, and Chaz really, in my mind, showcased why he is one of the best in the game. So that's not necessarily going to continue at the next round at Tasmania, which is not this weekend, next weekend. We could very easily get a different couple of winners in a couple of weeks.
Might sound like a dumb question, mate, but how different is it with the lights, and should there be more night racing as well? But what kind of a difference actually is it?
No, there isn't really a difference. It's just, Ryan Wood, for example, was his first time he drove under lights there on Friday evening, and it was like, it took him a couple of laps to adapt to the condition with his eyes and the likes, but really there isn't really any difference whatsoever. It's just a different environment and a different spectacle for the sport, but people like it. They enjoy it. There was a really good turnout at the track on Saturday evening, and it's just a different show. So, it's not something you should go and then do too often because it takes away that special feature of it. But I think people resonate to it, and it's just something that is a little bit different. Sure.
You talk about the tyres, and just I suppose the minutiae that is around that as well. What about the fuel and I'm always fascinated by who puts what in when and who decides to leave it until late, and the calculations. I suppose you're also factoring in, will there be a crash, and will the safety car come out, and that gives us extra time and all of that kind of stuff. So how important now has that become?
It's always important. I mean, and it depends on how what the regulations are around the fuel. So sometimes we have races, obviously, that are there's no minimum fuel drop. They just calculate what they need to get to the finish. Like Sandown and Bathurst, there's not a minimum. I don't think there is at Sandown. Maybe no, I don't think there is. And there's not at Bathurst, but they have in recent times put in a certain amount of stops that you have to do. As well. But on the weekend, for example, at Sydney, there was a minimum fuel drop per race. So again, it's not a huge amount of fuel, but you do have to put it in, and it's not enough fuel to do the entire race. So the car has to start with a certain amount, and they know how much it's obviously going to use for the race. And so teams change the amount they start with and bits and pieces to be able to maybe run longer into a stint. So there's lots of calculations around it, and teams are trying very hard to find different ways to get an advantage and maximise as well. So there's a lot to it. There's a bit of science, and there's certainly a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes with the teams to calculate the certain strategies around it. So it's not as simple as just putting the fuel in, for sure. There's different ways and means, and they look towards shortening certain stints and bits and pieces as well, and maximising the tyre life. So there's a lot to it.